Hello everyone. Welcome to the Essential Vegan Desserts live event for Rouxbe Plants. I'm Fran Costigan, the director of Vegan Pastry and co-creator of the course Essential Vegan Desserts. And I'm so happy to see so many of you here to spend some time with me in my kitchen today talking about desserts, spices, Halloween, and I've got a bunch of interesting questions that have come in. So thank you very much to those of you who sent in questions. Just before I get started, I want to remind everyone that on your desktop, you will see on the right, there's a place to put in a question should you have a question that you would like me to answer. I want to take a moment to talk to my Essential Vegan Desserts students and remind y'all that we have a private Facebook group. Please join the Facebook group. It's a really nice way to interact with your colleagues and anyone in Rouxbe, in Essential Vegan Desserts, in any Rouxbe course. If you have a problem of a technical nature, just write to support@rouxbe.com and someone from our ACE team will get back to you quickly as they do. Anyone here who has a question after the event or at some point, just write to me at fran@rouxbe.com and I will be happy to answer you with an email. I want to get right to this topic because it really is interesting to me and I hope it will be to you. You know, this time of the year, there is pumpkin spice everything. And I think it's very interesting because I notice it early in September. I notice it sometimes even at the end of August. I don't like to rush the seasons. And I think pumpkin spice is a lovely fall flavor. It means different things to different people, but I will tell you, you will never see me drinking or talking about a pumpkin spice latte or coffee. I like my coffee plain. I like it black with a little bit of Oatly froth sometimes, but not in my coffee. Anyway, you know, we are used to what is the Trinity, the Holy Trinity of pumpkin spice, which is cinnamon, clove, and nutmeg. And that works very well for a lot of people, but I've been expanding that over the year, and there are so many other warming spices that we can use that are really interesting. So I just want to I'm actually going to give you right now a pumpkin spice recipe that I use, and it is, I believe it is in the Essential Vegan Desserts course, but I made a little change, and it is 4 teaspoons of cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of nutmeg. I like to grind my nutmeg fresh, 1 teaspoon of ginger, and a half a teaspoon of clove or allspice. I have been replacing my clove pretty often lately with allspice. I really like allspice. And I'm crazy about cardamom, so I've been using cardamom too. Now, this is a great basic mix. You know, you can buy them in the supermarket. You can buy little jars of pumpkin spice, for example. But I think making your own with spices is economical and easy, and you can twist this to your own taste. What you really want to remember, of course, is if you use spices that are old, you're not going to have any flavor. So, for example, this is clove, Pemba cloves from Burlap and Barrel. I put in the Q&A a link to an event I did earlier in the year with Ori Zohar, who is the co-founder of Burlap and Barrel. And we learned so much in that event. He was so generous. We learned so much about spices. So I encourage you to look at that. In terms of cinnamon, well, there are many different kinds of cinnamon. and they have different flavor profiles and strengths. This is royal cinnamon, which actually sometimes is called Vietnamese cinnamon, and it is much stronger than the cinnamon called cinnamon verum or true cinnamon. And so these are things to take into account. Of course, I feel that with these spices, which are collectively known as the warming spices, less is more to start. Too much can take something that is delicious and make it taste medicinal, in my opinion. I like to cook the spices gently, and I also use them to make infusions. So I mentioned cardamom, my using cardamom as part of my pumpkin spice mix. My son came back from Sweden and he said, "Mom, the cardamom buns are delicious." And then I started talking with friends and everybody was talking about cardamom, and it's really lovely. So this again is a burlap and barrel. This is their cloud forest, which is ground pods, and I also have the seeds, which I can grind. So I would say if you're not familiar with cardamom, it's kind of floral, citrusy. I didn't know until recently that it is the third most expensive spice after saffron and vanilla. That really surprised me, but of course it surprised me because I didn't know. It is very labor intensive, harvesting and drying and hand collecting and so on. I think it works beautifully in pumpkin, pear, pistachio, rose, and dark chocolate. But again, start with a little bit. You can always add more. I like using allspice, often in place of clove. And if you aren't aware of this, some people are not, I know, allspice is not a blend. It's actually a single berry. So it combines really nicely notes of cinnamon, nutmeg, and clove naturally. I like it with sorghum or molasses, apple, banana, and date-based batters. It's wonderful. Other spices that you can use, or, when you think about fall desserts, star anise, which is sweet and a little bit licorice-like. A little bit goes far. A little bit goes a long way. Ginger, again, I happen to love ginger. I like ginger powder when it's a nice ginger powder. I make ginger juice. Yesterday, I bought a whole lot of ginger. I washed and chunked the fresh ginger. Well, it's not the baby ginger, and I chunked it, put it in my Vitamix with a little bit of water, blended it, and then strained it. And that's how I make ginger juice that I keep in silicone ice cube trays in my freezer. So it's ready to go. Coriander is a little more earthy, but it's subtle and it's wonderful in shortbread cookies and stone fruit. Remember fennel seeds if you like them, or anise. And I recently infused some oat milk with bay leaf. And, I think of bay as a spice for savory foods, but it was actually very nice in a poaching liquid. And sometimes a little bit of black pepper. So I would encourage you to try these other spices instead of sticking with cinnamon, nutmeg, and clove, unless that's what you like. And if that's what you like, then that's what you're going to use. Now, there are quite a number of questions, so I'm going to come over to a different screen here and start answering your questions. Okay, Debbie is asking if I have some suggestions for quince and persimmon if they're not enjoyed as raw fruit. So persimmon is not something that I eat very often, but this time of the year, I really like quince. It's hard to peel, but what I add a bit of finely chopped or grated quince into an apple pie, and I think that is the bomb. I love it. You can make quince paste by cooking peeled quince chunks until soft puree. Cook that down with sugar and lemon until thick and jammy, and then set it on a parchment lined sheet pan. You see that in the shops often, and it's a wonderful fruit. Certainly poach your quince chunks with any kind of poaching liquid that you like, and then you can make a quince crumble with a crumble topping. In the course, we have an apple crumble with a whole wheat pastry flour and spiced crumble on the top. Sometimes we use oats in a crumble, but that's something that you can do, and it's delicious. Bake until bubbling and golden. In terms of roast persimmons, you want to bake them or puree them. I mean, that's nice and juicy, and roast them. We have an assignment, actually. It's actually an assignment in Essential Vegan Desserts on roasting fruits, and persimmons would be one that I would roast. So try some of those options and let me know how it goes. And if anybody else has any other recommendations, you can also puree the persimmons and add it to a quick bread. So instead of pumpkin, you would have persimmon, and that should work fine. That should work just fine. Robert K. has a question about Halloween. He says, I love Halloween and the treats it brings. However, I feel terrible passing out unhealthy junk to kids. What do you think is a great healthy alternative? Do you think passing out vegan treats is a good idea? Well, Robert, I'm not going to pass judgment on anybody. People want to pass out candy. I hope it's a healthier candy or an organic candy or one with less junk in it. I have sometimes put together bags of raisins and peanuts and chocolate chips for kids. I think that's good, but I think, it depends on how old the children are. I'm kind of out of the passing out Halloween treats for a while now, but that's something that I think that you can do, or make, if you want to make your own treats, you could make a Rice Krispie treat using a vegan marshmallow. It's going to have some sugar in it. This is up to you. In terms of handing out apples and oranges, I remember, doing that, and it wasn't too successful. So it's one holiday. Do what feels right to you. Do what feels right to you. And good luck with Halloween. I have in the chat, in the Q&A, I have a blog that I wrote some time ago. Actually, I reached out to a number of vegan chefs and bloggers, and there's tons of vegan Halloween treats in that blog. So I would encourage you to go and look at that. Catherine has a really interesting question, and she is asking, what's the best thing to use to replace an egg wash on a pastry crust? I get so tongue-tied during these events sometimes, and to give it a nice sheen. So you have some options. Plant milk with a little bit of sweetener, maple or agave, brushed on your baked good before it goes into the oven is one option. In that case, soy milk really gives you the best result because soy milk has the most protein, but you could try it as well with oat milk if soy is a problem for you. Also, aquafaba, which is chickpea liquid, the liquid that chickpeas are cooked in, what we make our vegan meringue with, what we make our baked Alaska in the course with, is another option if that's something that will give you a more of a firm more of a firm, I want to say, I'm trying to think of the word, coating. It will give you a nice coating. And for the deepest color, non-dairy milk plus oil plus some sugar. So those are all great. Sometimes if I'm doing like a Danish, I want a stickier coating. I like to use apricot jam or orange marmalade, and I really like that. So good luck with that, Catherine. Cecilia is saying, oh, well, my favorite dessert is pumpkin pie. Do you have any suggestions on what to mix with the pumpkin to add to pie crust or even making pumpkin pudding? I have tons of suggestions because I like pumpkin pie too. It's not my favorite, but I like it, and it is my son's favorite, so I make it. We have a pumpkin pie in the course that is made with silken tofu, stands in for the eggs you would find to make the pumpkin pie custard filling. And it is indetectable and it's lovely. I recently made a pumpkin pudding for an event that's going to be happening in Philadelphia. American Vegan Center is doing I have to say this right, a vegan version of a Thanksgiving dinner from 1898. And I was asked to make pumpkin pudding. So I thought, okay, pumpkin pudding, what can I do? I didn't want to use a pumpkin pie base. I could have and made it softer. In that case, I would not have used any starch, for example, that needed to be cooked. But I thought about my chocolate pudding, and so I did this with 3 different ways, which is going to lead me into why testing recipes is so important. The first test was with canned pumpkin. The second test was with kabocha squash, which, if you know, is a drier, firmer squash after it's baked. And the third was with a coconut, which was my favorite. Rachel Klein of Miss Rachel's Pantry. Some of you may know Rachel. She beat Bobby Flay on television. I brought the sample to her and she really liked it. So this is a good time for me to ask Patrick to show you the photos that we have. Any of them. Okay. So we have a baked apple. That's from Diane Wenz. And her caramel is a date caramel. I've seen online recently that people are actually flattening dates, Medjool dates, pitted, of course, and enrobing their apples. But that was really delicious and a pretty healthy treat. And then we have, I think, an orange. Is that right? An orange for the healthiest Thanksgiving treat. And I just put some decorations on it to look scary, boo. And also cake balls. I took leftover cake, and this is something that my whole food plant-based no oil people can do, because you can take a no oil cake, crumble it up, get it to stick together with whatever you like, and decorate it. And then there is the pudding that I brought over to Miss Rachel for a tasting, and she was very happy with it. I layered it with the vanilla cashew cream that's in the course, and I made some candied pecans. So that will be going to this dinner. It actually was the idea of Seth Tibbett, the founder of Tofurkey, of all things, if you can imagine. So anybody who's kind of in the Philadelphia area, send a note to me if you like, if you're interested, at fran@rouxbe.com, and I will get the information to you. I know it is November 22nd. There you go. Okay. Raina has a question, a very interesting question about vanilla. Now, there is another live event in the library where my neighbor, colleague, and dear friend, Kathy Gold, who knows everything about vanilla, did a whole live event on vanilla. So you might want to go and look for that. But Raina is asking, what are the differences between using real vanilla extract, vanilla paste, or scraped vanilla beans? And I've got everything here, plus one that Raina didn't ask about. So this is one of my vanilla extracts. There are many, and vanilla extract should really just be vanilla beans and some alcohol. Sometimes they have sugar added. I try not to, I avoid those. This is vanilla bean paste, and vanilla bean paste is going to give your product the specs as if you were using a vanilla bean, but it's thicker, and it always has some kind of gum in it. It's a little bit sweeter, and that's an option. I have two of them. This is a burlap and barrel wild pompona. This is from the Peruvian Amazon. This is vanilla bean powder, and this is Halala pure vanilla bean powder, which is another excellent brand, women-owned brand from New Zealand. So I believe that I like to use vanilla extract in something that's going to be baked. I like to use the paste or a scraped vanilla bean. And that's the most luxurious, really, if you're doing a cream or a sauce, I prefer to use that. And the powder is a great option when you're making something where you just don't want to add any liquid to it. So those are your vanillas. Of course, start with a good vanilla. Again, no sugar added vanilla. If you're using a scraped vanilla bean, and we call the inside the caviar, really, because that's what it is, don't throw away your vanilla beans. They are expensive and they still have a lot of aroma. So you can use them to infuse a liquid or a custard, or dry them and grind them with sugar to make vanilla sugar. I use them pretty much 1-to-1 to start. Sometimes I will add even a little bit of vanilla bean in with vanilla extract. So it will depend. And also remember that vanilla extract comes in strengths, 1-fold, 2-fold, 3-fold. The higher the number, the stronger it is. So those are the differences. Oh, thank you, Patrick, for putting the link into the Vanilla Essential Vegan Desserts Live with Kathy Gold. Okay, Raina has another question, and she's asking, can you substitute jaggery or allulose equally when recipes call for granulated sugar? And I bet those of you who are here who have followed me know how I'm going to start this. Every single ingredient change makes a difference. So for the most part, the fast answer is no, you can't. So this is actually piloncillo, which is like jaggery. And what jaggery is it's the whole cane. So cane sugar contains, before it is separated out, molasses. Jaggery contains the whole molasses, and most of the time you find it in block form like this, and it gets grated. Not always. It has more moisture than cane sugar, So you're going to have to adjust your recipe. It also has a much stronger flavor than granulated sugar. And by granulated sugar, imagine that what Raina means is organic or cane sugar, cane sugar. We don't use any white sugar, which is cane sugar, granulated sugar, any supermarket sugar. In the course, we use, you can see I have a lot of sugars behind me. So this would be granulated sugar. This one is organic, fair trade, vegan, and regenerative. And it's not pure white because a bit of the molasses inherent in the cane is still in that sugar, but you don't really taste it. So this is going to be more like using a brown sugar, more like using a brown sugar. And again, I think you're going to have to play with the reducing the liquid a little bit. In terms of allulose, allulose is one of the sugar alcohols, and I don't use them. I have done events on them. I don't believe, my opinion, that they are healthful. It's not only my opinion. There's been a lot written about them. They have an aftertaste. For some people, there is a stomach upset, but those sugar alcohols like allulose are far stronger than granulated sugar. So you're going to have to reduce them. Sometimes I've seen it says 1:1. You're definitely going to have to work with the liquid and the baking time. They tend to bake differently. So that's my answer, Raina. I hope that's helpful. Tiffany has a question about sugar cookies. She says, one thing I really miss from being non-vegan, or from when I was non-vegan, is sugar cookies with icing for Halloween. Is there a way to do it in a way that is whole food and plant-based, i.e. healthy but still good? And that's the million-dollar question, right? So Tiffany, there are lots of recipes that are vegan, healthy-ish, and absolutely delicious, like my chocolate cake, for example, or the pudding. Or in terms of a sugar cookie, though, sugar cookie is really a very simple recipe. It's basically flour, cane sugar, and a fat, like butter, creamed in. I actually do sugar cookies sometimes with oil, replacing the oil. And when I replace oil, when I use oil in place of butter, I use about 3/4 of the amount. However, the fat and the sugar, which is significant in a sugar cookie, is what gives it the texture, the consistency, the texture, and the flavor that you're missing. So I would say the answer is you're not going to get the same thing at all. And I would encourage you to find a whole food plant-based. And by that, you might mean whole food plant-based, no oil recipe that is already in place, not a sugar cookie. Whole food plant-based cookies tend to be chewier than a vegan cookie is still, or mine are, or in this course, our recipes are whole foods to a great extent, with very few exceptions. But a sugar cookie is going to be hard to do in a whole food plant-based way, if at all. If anybody disagrees with me, I would really like to know that. I'm always looking for information. And I've said this before. One of the things that I love the most about culinary is there's always something new to learn. So thank you for that question. Robin says, I know you are always saying you should only substitute 2 ingredients in baking. I want to make a pumpkin roll. It calls for 4 eggs. Does that count as 4 ingredients? Well, Robin, I don't know if, in terms of substituting 2 ingredients in baking, I wouldn't say that that's what I meant if that's what you heard. I think what you heard me say was it's hard to go beyond replacing 2 eggs in a recipe. So your pumpkin roll that calls for 4 eggs would be very difficult. I would find a pumpkin roll that is already vegan. You know, there are so many good vegan recipes out there already. You don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. You can, look in Essential Vegan Desserts course and you find many recipes already, or any of the Rouxbe plants courses have recipes that are already to go. There are so many wonderful vegan or plant-based, whatever you want to, whichever way you prefer to say that, recipes available. Look for authors, chefs, recipe writers that you trust. Don't just go out into the, go out and Google something and you'll come back and say, well, that didn't work and it didn't make any sense. So really what I've been saying is it's easiest to substitute 2 eggs. So your pumpkin roll for 4 eggs would be difficult. You might cut the recipe in half, maybe even by 1/4, and test it with egg replacement for, if you're doing it in a half, 2 eggs, and then add some applesauce or another fruit puree. We talk about other egg replacements. Aquafaba is an egg replacement. And you can get Bob's Red Mill egg replacement. A flax egg can work sometimes, or a chia egg. So those are my suggestions for you. And good luck, Robin. Teresa has a follow-up question about the pumpkin pudding. And she's asking, which turned out the best of the 3 ingredients you mentioned in the parfait? I will say, Teresa, that they all tasted good to me. It was very subtle different. The one, and believe it or not, I thought the canned pumpkin that I tried first was very nice. But our favorite, and Rachel is a really fine chef here in Philadelphia. If anybody gets a chance to come to Philly and get on her mailing list so you know when the dinners open up, because they sell out very quickly, she and I together decided that we liked the squash best, that was called a coconut. So it's kind of shaped like that. It's much smaller. It has a hard shell. I think a butternut squash is very similar to the coconut. And if that isn't in your region, butternut squash probably is. So I think that would be great. If the only squash that you can get and you don't want to use canned pumpkin, and when I use canned pumpkin, I use an organic canned pumpkin, then you can do a kabocha squash. And because that is heavier and has less moisture in it, puree it with some maple syrup to get a nice smooth puree. So it was a wonderful pudding. It was very easy. I used oat milk because when I'm cooking for a crowd, I make a couple of assumptions. One is there will be soy avoiders. That's sure not me. I've been eating soy for 35 years now with no problem. In fact, with health benefits, I assume there will be nut avoiders or nut allergic. So I don't want to use almond milk or a cashew milk, although the cream was a cashew-based cream, but that is an option. And so I warmed some brown sugar, and a little bit of cane sugar, cornstarch, organic cornstarch, and warmed it, and a little bit of agar powder, tiny little bit. Agar is a secret ingredient to vegan desserts, and so we have a whole unit on that in Essential Vegan Desserts. And then added the pumpkin puree or the squash puree, if you will, and cooked it until it was just at a simmer. And then I added my spices. And what I do every single time, no matter what I make, is I took a tablespoon, I put it in the refrigerator to check the consistency. If it wasn't the consistency that I would expect, I would add a little bit more agar powder. So that's my answer, Teresa, to your question. I hope that helps you. It was a really lovely dessert. And I'll tell you, because if you think about it, I'm saying that I made 3 versions of it, right? So my neighbors are happy people. I give taste to other people because I'm in my home alone. There's a limit to how much dessert I can taste or should taste. And then I turned one of them into pumpkin ice cream. I took the pudding, I froze it, and I have a Ninja Creme, and it was sensational. It was really great. So, squash and pumpkin. Behind me, I have, oh my gosh, so many apples. I love apples this time of the year. I went apple picking it's in September, I think. It was just great. So thank you all for being here. I don't see any further questions. So I'm going to say goodbye and appreciate you once again. And I hope you will join me in December at my live event. Take care, everyone. Bye.